what I wanted the world to see was vulnerability. I wanted the world to see that people weren't alone, because when I was going through this, I searched the internet. I went to bookstores and no mothers were out there talking about their story. So I wanted to tell it. But last year during the pandemic, I'm literally laying in my bed and I hear a voice that says, put love on one shoulder, patience on another, and the pain of other women on your back. Because when I was on national radio and TV, mothers were calling saying, you're telling my story, can you help me? But I know when you heal a mother, you heal a whole community. And so I put a Facebook post out. I was gonna only do Black families, African-American mothers here in New Orleans. But nobody reached out after I put the post out. When I went to groups, mothers of incarcerated children, parents, of incarcerated children, mothers of sons and daughters who are incarcerated, I had thousands of mothers reaching out to me saying, I want to be a part of this. It takes $40,000 a year to incarcerate a prisoner. It only takes about $10,000 of that to treat with mental illness, but nobody wants to do that. It's like, okay, let me just throw them in a cage. Let me throw them in a cage, and we getting these I hate to say it, out the way. Crazy. The same room my mom was in, died in, I was in that room. And I remember the doctor walking in and he said to me, if you don't get it together, you're gonna be dead in a matter of weeks. And so I went home and I'm trying to get myself together. I took off from work for a minute, took a leave of absence, and I was writing Blake every day. We were talking, and he's still in the county jail, and then they moved him. I'm literally driving to Houston every weekend for a 15-minute visit until they move him to a penitentiary to do hard labor. And I'm going through extensive therapy, which really, really worked. 7 years later, I decide to take all the journals that I have and make them into a book. And I said to Blake, I said, how do you feel about me putting our story out? And he said, Mama, do it and call it Mama, I Should Have Listened. He said, and I want to make contributions to the book because I think we can help other families. And so I'm writing, and I write him a letter, and he write me back a letter. And in this letter, he says to me, we let each other down. And he says something, and I'm like, I'm not putting this in a book. And I sat my kids down and they were like, Mama, you need to put this in the book. Of course, they're older now. But I remember my younger son saying to my son, who's a photographer, he said, if Essence was to take your picture and they were to, edit that picture, how would you feel? So this is how Blake feels. You need to put it in a book. And so I put it in a book, and I got married again, and I said to my husband and my kids, I'm telling our story. And it's not just for me, or it's not just for family. I'm gonna go on the Breakfast Club, I'm gonna go on national radio and TV. And they're like, my husband's like, no, you're not. You really think you're gonna go on the Breakfast Club? And I said, I am, because I want the world to hear my story. And I did just that. And that was 3 years ago. And last year, I don't, and I'm going to say this very consciously, I don't move until God tells me to move. When he tells me to move, that's when I move. Because I thought about writing a book a long time ago, but God never said write that book. I wanted to make sure that the title was strategic, my words were strategic, and I would come through telling a true and authentic story. It didn't matter how I looked. What I wanted the world to see was vulnerability. I wanted the world to see that people weren't alone, because when I was going through this, I searched the internet. I went to bookstores and no mothers were out there talking about their story. So I wanted to tell it. But last year during the pandemic, I'm literally laying in my bed and I hear a voice that says, put love on one shoulder, patience on another, and the pain of other women on your back. Because when I was on national radio and TV, mothers were calling saying, you're telling my story, can you help me? Because I don't know what to do. My son is in prison, and what am I gonna do? And so my son, Christopher, was home at the time, and I said, come here, I wanna talk to you about something. I wanna do a documentary, and I wanna talk to mothers. I wanna help mothers to tell their story and to get some healing. Because I've healed, but I know when you heal a mother, you heal a whole community. And so I put a Facebook post out. I was gonna only do Black families, African-American mothers here in New Orleans. But nobody reached out after I put the post out. When I went to groups, mothers of incarcerated children, parents, of incarcerated children, mothers of sons and daughters who are incarcerated, I had thousands of mothers reaching out to me saying, I want to be a part of this. And so Christopher said, well, how much money you have? And I said, I have $1,500. And he's like, that's not going to even rent camera equipment. So my husband is from New Jersey, and he went to two of his Jewish friends, and they both gave us $5,000 apiece. My good friend gave me $2,000, and there we had $12,000. And we rented cameras, and we got in our cars, and we drove to Houston, we drove to Mississippi, we went to St. Louis, Missouri, we went to New York, we went to Chicago, we went to Arkansas, we went to Alabama. And I got these stories because I wanted them to know that they were not alone. I didn't want to have another mother attempt to commit suicide because her child was in prison and she was dealing with this trauma.
What's wrong, Blake?
What's wrong?
Everything that's going on.
The caller has hung up.
All right.
You talk about your son Blake,
Yes.
aka BJ.
When the judge said, you will hereby serve 40 years in a state penitentiary, no, the Texas State Penitentiary, I collapsed. When I leave that prison, I cry each and every time because it's so hard for me as a mother. I decided no more. And this is Tosha Mills, Blake Smith's mother. The problem that I have is they had 12 people on the list that got killed last year in this prison, and her son's name wasn't on it.
Oh my God.
Why was that?
Families need justice as well.
We need to look at the correction system. We need to look at the Bureau of Prisons. We need to look at the people that work within these institutions.
It's a hellhole, and we know it. The world's gotta know it.
I don't think that we have a justice system. I think we have an unjust system.
I received a letter from my son, and he almost died in your disgusting.
I've seen people collapse in medical and no one knows what to do.
This is $1 billion business, and it angers me as it should anger you. The more mothers that I speak to, I see it, and it's heartbreaking. It makes me cringe, and it makes me want to go out and do more of this work. We're gonna leave Huntsville and go back to Houston, Mississippi, which is only a 4-hour drive from here. And from Houston, Mississippi, we're gonna drive over to Austin, Texas, which is like a 15-hour drive.
Tosha Mills, we all know, she started a revolution. She started a movement.
If you sever the relationship between mother and child, which pretty much happens with people who are incarcerated, you've essentially destroyed a component of the mother.
You may start the conversation now.
Hey Blake, Mom is not doing good.
Huh? Please let me say this. If there's one thing we've learned here at the Hustlers Corner New York City, is that you never think it's going to be the way you think it's going to be. You never know who you're going to reach.
That's true.
When you said that you wanted this to be about Black mothers and Black families, we scratched that right off of our list, because when we started reaching out, like with the story that you just told, the same thing happened. We got people from all walks of life interested in it. They came from everywhere. And it shows you that what you're going through is not just a problem in the Black community. It's going straight across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, these stories that we're getting from people, it's like, and you would think that, you know, you were getting no response from people, but you only find later on that you were reaching out to the wrong people. When you just put your story out there and you went to those groups that were also interested, that's when you connected. And
well, I realized I found my own community. I built a community of women who were all hurting, and they were all going through trauma. And I wanted to help them heal. But I also wanted them to take accountability and responsibility, and also make them angry to start to advocate and do something. So we got mothers from all walks of life. I also wanted to show racial disparities. I wanted to show sentencing disparities. I wanted to show what white families go through. I wanted to show their privilege, how they're getting 6 years for a murder, and my son got 40 years for a robbery. I wanted to show all these things, you know, and that's what I've done through this. I wanted to go after the Bureau of Prisons, and I did just that. I wanted to talk about how the drugs are getting in the prisons. They're not coming through the inmates and their families. They're coming from the correctional officers, the chief, the warden. I wanted us to talk about those things. One of my mother's son got killed in prison by his cellmate. She moved from Arkansas to Atlanta to give her kids a better life. And the better life basically killed him, because they moved in an all-white community, because for some of us, we think white is right and white is better. And they basically said they don't belong there. And so this little boy went and found a community that he belonged in, committed a crime, and 3 months prior to him coming home, they killed him. They killed him. And Jennifer didn't know what to do. No attorney would take the case because in their eyes, he was a criminal. Nobody would talk to her. So I went in and I got an attorney to take the case. I went in and we did a protest in front of the prison. Then we had 2 nurses to call us who didn't work, who worked in the prison and said, I've been dealing with the torture of your son for a year now. I was in that prison when it happened. Your son sat up and said to us, please don't let me die, a 23-year-old. But y'all didn't get to him in time. So it was negligence. So we're going after the negligence of the criminal justice system. It's time for us to stand up and do prison reform, because the people that are closest to the problem are the people closest to the solution. You have all these celebrities saying what they're gonna do, but they're not there. They don't have a dog in this race. So they're gonna only do so much. When you are directly affected by this system, you have to fight because that's all you have. And when you show up in numbers, things start to change, but you have to get angry first. So I tell people, you know what? Through this generational trauma, I found generational treasure.
Yeah, and that,
go ahead, Jeanette. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I agree with you 100%, Tosha, because we, Hustlers Corner, we try to reach out to many organizations to speak out, what's going on behind, the prisons. It's amazing what the story we be hearing. You know, from the food, from the medication, the mental, the abuse. I mean, it's unbelievable. And there's no, we trying to reach out, but there's nobody wanting to take the responsibility. We got to talk to someone. How we could talk to someone who going to be in charge of all of this. Somebody had to be in charge of this.
And that's why we have to take the initiatives. Like a lot of these people, one of my mother's son was beat up by the police so bad, but he has a mental illness. And they were told by the police chief to take him to the coroner's office. But see, we like to diagnose our illnesses with, depression, anxiety, fear. They're not properly diagnosed as a mental illness. It takes $40,000 a year to incarcerate a prisoner. It only takes about $10,000 of that to treat with mental illness, but nobody wants to do that. It's like, okay, let me just throw him in a cage. Let me throw him in a cage, and we getting these I hate to say it out the way. But that's what it is.
This concludes this session of the Hustlers Corner New York City. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. If you are a person who was wrongfully incarcerated for a crime you didn't commit, come share your story on the Hustlers Corner New York City Victims of the System series. If you are a person who has been self-reformed and you decided to go to straight and narrow in an effort to share your story with our youth to show them that there's a better way, come share your story on the Hustlers Corner New York City Legends of the Hood series. If you are a performing artist or a rapper, hip hop artist, a vocalist, an actress, and you want to share your story of how you built your successful career, come share your story on the Hustlers Corner New York City On the Grind series. If you are a Black-owned business and you want to share your story of how you went from zero to self-employment, come share your story about your business and your products on the Hustlers Corner New York City Black Business Movement series. If you are a woman who has been through traumatic times,
who's suffered from any type of abuse, sexual, physical, emotional, and you've managed to triumph over them, and you want to share your story. Come share your story on the Hustlers Corner New York City Lipstick Stories series. And with that said, I just want to say that if you like our show, please show your love. Hit that like button, share. Don't forget to leave a comment. And most of all, subscribe. Thank you. Looking forward to you joining us again